Today, we are diving into the world of mindful literacy with Russell Van Brocklen, a champion for dyslexic learners and the families who love them. We are unpacking why so many reading plans stall, how tiny tweaks can unlock big progress, and the 10-minute nightly routine that transforms I can't into I just did. If you've ever felt stuck between generic worksheets and actual results, this conversation is your turning point. Welcome to the show, Russell. It's an honor to have you.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So, many parents start strong but hit a wall in their child's reading progress. Why do the three hidden mistakes, ignoring interest, going general to specific, and skipping word analysis, trip us, even well intentioned efforts?
Well, the first thing I want to do for parents who really have an interest in this is to point you to the actual hard science. It's a book called Overcoming Dyslexia. I'm going to discuss the second edition from Dr. Shaywitz from Yale University that discusses brain scans. In specific, I'm going to direct you to an image on page 78, figure 23. Essentially, what this shows is the back part of the brain of a typical student has massive neuroactivity, but the dyslexic has virtually none. The front part of the dyslexic brain is about 2.5 times overactive. Yale says that this deals with two areas, articulation followed by word analysis. So just what I originally did with that. My project was funded by the New York State Senate. We took highly motivated and intelligent 16 to 18-year-old high school students, and we gave them the writing test for going into graduate school, even though they were writing like 12-year-olds. So we gave them the writing assessment for people that are like 21 and 22. It's called the Graduate Records Exam Analytical Writing Assessment. I just want you to think about that. The graduate analytical articulation, that's the overactive front part of the brain. That's where they match. What happened? It was one class period a day for a school year in the United States, about 180 days. And at the end, the students were writing average of entering graduate students. They all went to college, no accommodations. They all graduated with GPAs between 2.5 to 3.6. When I presented this research at a major dyslexia conference in New York City in 2006, one of the concerns was, what about typical students? How do we bring this down to an average student who is not massively motivated and massively intelligent? What I had to do is I had to flip articulation followed by word analysis, which is recommended by Yale, to word analysis followed by articulation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you an example of how powerful this is. So typically what happens when parents start to do this is they start off with a child writing, as one special ed teacher said, my student's writing a bunch of apparently randomly placed misspelled words. I don't even know where to begin. So what I do is I say, okay, we are first going to define the child's speciality, their area of extreme interest and ability. So how you typically do that, it's a Saturday morning, the child has nothing to do, they can do whatever they want. What is it that they want to do? That's generally their speciality. Okay. And then I'm just going to give you an example that I use a lot. This girl's name is Sarah. She's 10 years old in 5th grade. Her favorite thing in the world is swimming. So what we're going to do is to show her to write a basic 3-word sentence with correct spelling. All right. Now, to do that, we have the parents go over to a laptop computer with a real keyboard, not an iPad, not an iPhone, but an actual real computer. The parent will type out hero, plus sign, what are we talking about? The child copies it. Then we switch the hero for the student's name. In this case, Sarah, plus sign, what are we talking about? And then we have the student type it out, and then we answer, what are we talking about, with a student's speciality, their favorite thing. So Sarah, plus sign, swimming. See how we got there?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, here's the question. I'm going to ask you something we have to fill in the plus sign with a word to make it a proper 3-word sentence. When I do this at major dyslexia conferences, 90% of the teachers don't get it because they don't follow my extremely simple instructions exactly. And without it being followed exactly, it doesn't work. So here's my question. Do you think I'm going to be able to fool you?
I don't know. Let's see.
Let's see. Okay, remember, Sarah's favorite thing in the world is swimming. So we got Sarah, plus sign, swimming. We need to replace the plus sign. So here's my question. Does Sarah like or dislike swimming?
Mm, she likes swimming.
Okay. So do you see how you put in she likes swimming? So if you replace she with Sarah, Sarah likes swimming. But that's not what I asked. I asked, does she like or dislike swimming? As an educated person, you automatically added the S and completed the sentence automatically. But Sarah's dyslexic. She doesn't know how to add the S. And therein lies the problem. How do we teach Sarah to add the S? What the wealthy would use. If Bill Gates had a dyslexic child, he would use an Orton Gillingham multi-sensory structured language approach. Assuming the child is 9 years old or older, that requires 4 to 5 years in a full-time private school at a cost of about $75,000 a year to correct the concerns. Literally, that's what it costs. So how do we make this much more affordable, much faster, much easier on the child? What we do is I would ask Sarah I would ask her that question, and she would say like, because that's what I asked her. And now we have Sarah like swimming. How do we get her to add the S? What I would do is I would say, Sarah, read what you wrote out loud, and here's my big assumption. I assume the child speaks proper English. Or whatever language you're teaching this in, I assume they speak it properly. That's the one caveat for make this work. So I'd ask Sarah, read out what you just wrote, and does it sound generally correct? So she would read out, Sarah likes swimming. Sarah, does that sound generally correct? No. Fix it. So she goes ahead and fixes it. It's Sarah likes swimming. Now, as you see, like and dislike is a very simple form of word analysis, that area of the brain, the front part that's 2.5 times overactive. Now we need to move on to articulation. And then we add the word because, and then we say the first reason. Sarah, why do you like swimming? Sarah likes swimming because it's fun. Now you have, after the word because is articulation. But now we're probably dealing with a lot of misspelled words. So how do we correct the spelling and grammar? Well, the spelling is very simple. We tell Sarah before she puts the period down, she can ask any question. And then if she asks the question correctly and there's a misspelled word, she just has to retype that one word. But if she puts the period down and there's a spelling mistake and a grammar mistake, and I mean a major grammar mistake, then she has to retype the entire sentence. So what do these kids do? They put the period down, and we can go through and point out, like, maybe she spelled fun wrong. Maybe she spelled swimming wrong. Now she has to retype the entire sentence, and she's going to start to concentrate and say, I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm not going to make that mistake. So what does she do? She goes ahead and makes that mistake again. Typically, I see them make this mistake between 3 and 12 times. As the child progresses, they get more and more frustrated with themselves and they concentrate even harder. This is to be encouraged. And how you tell them to make it as easy as possible on them, tell them one of two things. I see you made a silly mistake, or I see that you made a silly error. Those are the two least offensive terms that I found over the years. So as Sarah goes down, and it's number 9 or number 10, she is concentrating so incredibly not to make the mistake that sometimes you'll see sweat coming down their foreheads. When they finally get it correct, fantastic. We do 10 likes and 10 dislikes, and we make sure that it's perfect before we move on to reason 1, and then reason 1 and reason 2, and then reason 1, reason 2, and reason 3. If there is a mistake, we just have them keep retyping until it's correct. That massive concentration where they're focusing so intensely That's where the magic happens. That's where you start seeing things to self-correct. Well, this could take anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. What is different about what I teach, unlike Orton Gillingham, where the older the child is, the quicker they will pick it up with my process. With Orton Gillingham, the older the child is, the longer it takes, because they have to go back and learn everything else, plus what they're supposed to be learning now, which makes it very difficult. So by doing that, what I just showed you in that short amount of time, you go ahead and do that. You have now taken your child's writing level from that of a 5-year-old to that of a late 7th-year-old to a beginning 8-year-old. All right. It's that simple. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, but when we had to recreate this new model, that's number 3. Okay. Word analysis followed by articulation. What I found is if we're going to work with these children at all, we have to focus on their speciality. By far, the most popular book when I was working with children privately, it was Walt Disney's biography. It's called Walt Disney: The Triumph of the American Imagination. It's 1,000 pages approximately, written for 16 to 17-year-olds. And yes, I give it to 10-year-old children who are reading like they're 7. Why? Because they're so fanatically interested in it. So, for example, I would start the children out on a section on Marceline, Missouri, where Walt lived in a farming community between age 5 and 10. He spent his entire life trying to recreate that experience. So when you go into Disneyland or Disney World or the Magic Kingdom and you walk into Main Street, USA, that's Marceline, Missouri. The children really want to figure out what the traditional Disney magic is. Why is this the most magical place on earth? It's based on 2 universal themes. The first one is so easy to find, and the value is very limited. The second one is by far the most important. And to give you an example how hard these children are willing to work, I started off giving this book to one girl when she was 10. By the time she was 12, yes, it's 2 years later, she's now reading her book fully. Again, a book designed for 16 and 17-year-olds. Her mother has a master's degree, and she can't find the second universal theme that allows for the Disney magic. And I asked her 12-year-old daughter, and as 12-year-old girls will say to the moms, "Mom, it's right there." Her mom was shocked. She went through it several times, missed it. And I said, at least in this case, your 12-year-old daughter is now comprehending better than you can. Have I done my job? And her mom would say, shocked, yes. Now, that's an extreme example. Typically more for elementary school kids, they use the Harry Potter series. And for young ladies, this is what they tell me, and it's very painful to hear. They choose Hermione because, as they said, Hermione isn't stupid and they don't want to be stupid anymore. So we have them, what's the secret? We have them go through their chapter, one chapter at a time. They're listening to their audiobook while reading their real book, trying to answer a specific question. What does the hero want to do? What does the hero like? What does the hero doesn't like? As they're going through, if they find a word they don't absolutely know what the definition is, they circle a word, they go to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, and they pick their definition. So then they'll type out the word, they'll type out the definition, their definition. Now, here's my question to you. How many times do you have to type out a word and the definition until you permanently know it? How many times do you think?
Not many.
Okay, maybe 3 to 5 or something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
A dyslexic might need 10 or 20. That's why literally that first chapter, that first section, they might be on it for months. And that's okay. Because as they're going through it again and again, they find a word they don't know. They type out the word, they type out the definition. Eventually, they will be able to read the entire section or chapter. And I hear this from parents all the time. My child won't do the work. And I say, exactly. If you're outside their speciality, they will not do the work. But if you're inside their speciality, they will do their work. Because what I asked them when I interview them, I asked them two questions. In your area, in your speciality, in your area of extreme interest and ability, do you find that you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization? And they say yes. And they're wondering how I knew that. And then for a second question, that first question says, once they answer yes, it's attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or mild dyslexia. If you want to know if they're severely dyslexic, you ask the second question. In your speciality, it's in your you want to write something about it. It's in your head. Fingers, keyboard, fingers, keyboard. And I literally show my fingers twiddling and then putting them towards the keyboard. The idea is in your head, fingers, keyboard. Once you put your fingers on the keyboard, does the idea fly out of your head, leaving you with an empty brain? Most kids will answer no. If they answer yes, it's severe dyslexia, and they look shocked. How did I know that about them? Nobody knows that about them. And I tell them, well, you don't think other people haven't gone through what you're going through, haven't solved it, you don't think people have had this who came before you? And at that point, they start to understand. And then I ask them, is this how you would like to overcome your reading and writing issues? And the vast majority of kids say yes. And it's a simple combination. It's simply getting their book. They start getting their audio book first. You get the audio book with a narrator they like. You can get a printed copy of a real book. Doesn't always go the other way around. And you can get them started. All right. Now, that's major points. But the second point in the model is even more critical, because I found this talking to top dyslexic professors at major research universities. What they would tell me is that when they were in undergrad, they would take classes like philosophy or art history, and I would say, well, good for you. And then a lot of them would say, well, I didn't particularly like the class, or I didn't like the class. And I would ask why. And they would come and tell me that it's because the teacher, the professor, taught not from the general to the specific, but from the specific to the general. So let me give you an example. If you were to ask the question, what effect did Martin Luther King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech have on the American civil rights movement in the 1960s? Gen Ed student, they can just run with it. They know what to do. A dyslexic, that's like asking them to grab fog. No concept, no idea. But if you ask them what a specific to the general question, what personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, then we can go to his biography and find out, which leads naturally to another question that extends that a little bit, which leads to another question, which then forces our brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. So the secret with dealing with dyslexics is focus on what I like to call the intervention period until you get the reading and writing up to grade level, or preferably much higher, is to focus on a book that they're really interested in their audiobook. Number two, teach them not from the general to the specific, but from the specific to the general, and then do word analysis followed by articulation. Now, what do our school systems do? They do the exact opposite, because remember, they're used to dealing with general education students whose back part of the brain have massive neuroactivity, where the dyslexic has next to none. The front part of our brain, the dyslexic has 2.5 times the neuroactivity. The gen ed student has very little. So essentially, and I'm really oversimplifying this, but so you can grasp about what the problem is. Essentially, what the school systems have been doing, without knowing the brain science, going back over 100 years, is they focus on making us well-rounded individuals. We take classes in a lot of subjects until our third year in college, and then we really specialize in grad school where dyslexics excel. So the dyslexic is at a huge disadvantage for that. Then the schools teach from the general to the specific, which is like asking dyslexics to grab fog. And then they certainly don't do word analysis followed by articulation. So they have essentially created the perfect storm to make dyslexics in school absolutely miserable. Okay, absolutely miserable. That's why I encourage parents where we work with them directly, where we can show them how to pick a book their child likes, focus on the specific to the general, and word analysis followed by articulation to work with their child directly to overcome their concerns because you can do it a lot more efficiently than even the best private schools.
Yeah, it does. And I imagine that realizing these mistakes exist exist can be both relieving and frustrating for families. It validates their struggle but also shows there's been a simpler path all along.
Yes, the path that I showed you is again, I am taking, again, just so you know what I'm basing everything on. Overcoming Dyslexia from Yale came out in, I think it was 2003. This last edition I'm talking about came out in something like 2018, and I don't know if there's a newer one. I just focus on the second edition. Um, and it essentially is just showing us that the dyslexic brain is radically different. And I have spent the last 20 years talking to successful dyslexic professors because these professors that didn't go to these private schools that show dyslexics how to use the Orton Gillingham approach to overcome their issues, that's very expensive. When I spoke to them, certain patterns arose. And then once I understood those patterns, we decided to connect this with how do we teach this? When I presented in New York City, the senior professors came up to me and they said, "We don't care that you had, 16-year-olds writing like 22-year-olds in the 70th percentile. We don't care. We want a book called The Craft of Research." And I said, "The craft of what?" And they said, "The Craft of Research." It came out from the University of Chicago Press in 1995 because their PhD students didn't know how to write research papers. It breaks things down into context, getting everybody on the same page, problem, state a research problem, and then a solution where you come up with something original. So what we've done is I dropped this instead of advanced high school students, where it is in its fifth edition, I dropped context to 9 and 10-year-olds. I dropped problems to 11 to 13-year-olds, and I dropped solution to 14 through 18-year-olds. So, for example, for solution, imagine your your dyslexic child is writing a paper on Romeo and Juliet. They follow the process that we teach, and they will turn in a paper to their teacher that is completely original at the graduate school level, and the teacher will learn something substantive. Why is that important now into the work world? Because give you an example. I had a student last year who graduated from a good university. He detested artificial intelligence, absolutely hated it. But his boss loved it. And he said, "I'm not going to allow you to spend all the time it takes to do normal writing when the artificial intelligence can get you to a first draft very quickly." So he told the new hires, "I want some ideas from you that we can implement to help, to improve the company." And he kept going through. So my student contacted me, former student. He said, "I don't know what to do." I said, "You've been trained in the craft of research. You know how to do context. Go to the AI, talk to it, type with it, figure out how to come back with the context." He came back and he said, "I didn't, this was tough." I said, "Well, you did it. You figured it out. Now go do the problem." He comes back, "I hate this." And I said, "Welcome to the adult world. You're a college graduate now. You have to do as your boss tells you." Then he goes and creates the solution, writes it up in a very, very confined 5-paragraph essay. He took the time to make it short. His boss flips through assignments. Can't use this, can't use this, comes to his. "This is fantastic. We can use this. This is a good idea." Within a week, he was training his peers on how to use artificial intelligence. And he just said, "I don't understand how I'm able to do this. I just found what worked going through context, problem, and solution. And this is what it was." And I said, "You've been trained in the craft of research. You've been trained how to do this. And now you can show others how to do it. Doesn't matter about which AI model you're using. I showed you how to prompt engineer your brain." And he has had a very successful career over the past year. That's how important this is, especially as artificial intelligence is replacing a lot of new new jobs that college graduates used to do. The CEO of Anthropic said he believes in the next 5 years, half of the kids graduating from American universities are going to, they're going to be a 50% unemployment rate. Those who can use artificial intelligence and to guide it now with the new agents will be doing great. They'll be making a lot more money. Those that can't, it's a very bleak future. That's why training and knowing the art, how to do the craft of research is so critically important. And those concepts came up in 1995. They're still so relevant today.
100%. And if tonight's talk lit a spark for you, don't let it fade. Grab one interest, one small example, and one hero versus villain word map, and make it part of your evening. Progress in reading isn't magic, it's momentum, and momentum. Start small. Let's give our learners not just the tools, but the belief that every page is theirs to own.
Well, thanks for having me. If the parents want to contact me directly, the best thing to do is to go to dyslexia classes, that's plural, dyslexiaclasses.plural.com. And there's a button there that says download free report. Fill out the brief form, and you can set up a 15 to 30-minute chat with me where I can go over this with your child. You'll be able to get a book, The 3 Reasons Your Child's Struggling at School Due to Dyslexia and How to Get Past It. And we can set that up at a convenient time, and we can get you on your way.